Yeah, I turned into a box. All right, cool. That being said, let's move on to this first look at this wild beast of a camera. So, I mean, as you know, there have been some shipping delays with this camera. I guess there's been a factory fire. And actually, Mike, if you want to mute that computer. So I guess there's like a handful of these cameras out and about in the U.S. So I was lucky enough to, I guess, have been in a small batch from B&H. So that's cool. I'm about it. I basically pre-ordered the camera the moment it went live on B&H. It wasn't live like right. I think it was 7 in the morning. It went live. It was supposed to go live, but it didn't actually pop up until like about 7:15. So I was sitting there waiting, and I wasn't able to order. So I went on Adorama, and I actually put in an order there. And then once I saw it was live on B&H, I canceled Adorama and then ordered through B&H. So I have one. So I don't know if any of the people who ordered from Adorama have been so lucky, but I was basically one of the first people to order this camera. So there you go. No echo, but peaking, distorting a little. Okay, cool. Hey, Mike, you want to turn me down a little bit? You turned it down a little bit? All right, let me know if I sounds a little bit better. So yeah, I'm super excited about this camera. As you know, I have a ton of Sony cameras. I have like two FX9s, two A7Ss, two FS7, you know, all the Sonys. So this camera, what I'm planning on doing with it is, this is basically going to be turning into my primary YouTube camera. This way I can just leave a camera built and just set up in the corner of a room and just not have to worry about it, building it out and breaking it down in between jobs. And it's got everything I want in a camera. It's got time code, it's got XLR, it's got the variable NDs, all the things. So I'm really excited about this camera. I was never really a fan of the FS5. I was never really a fan of the FS5. I just never really enjoyed using that camera. It was just such a complete departure from the FS7, which is what I used. That was actually, the FS5 was actually the camera I was planning on getting before I ultimately decided to go with the FS7. And it ultimately boiled down to having 10-bit 422 at 4K, because FS5 is only 8-bit. And I'm really glad I went with the FS7, because that camera was probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career. So I'm really excited about that. ROG Ears was delayed till January 19th, 1 month late. A lot of delays going around. You're sad you didn't get the 6K. You know, I'm sad too. I'm just kidding. I gave it away. Yeah, no, someone won it, and they sent me a picture. They received it yesterday. Sorry if you didn't win. There was a lot of entries in that giveaway. But moving on, let's dive in. Let's see what this thing's all about. So I've been actually on a job since Tuesday, and this camera arrived on Wednesday. So I've obviously been working. So here we go. Okay, in the box, cables, fun. Looks like the handle, fun. Sorry we don't have a top-down camera, but EVF or viewfinder, AC, little BPU 35, and look at this little guy. Would you just look at that? It's tiny, tiny. Mr. B, our production's still alive in LV. They're kind of picking up. It depends. A lot of it's remote, but it's like it kind of, not really. Yeah, that'd be my answer to that. I would say, to also add on to that, I'm probably working maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. So, if that answers your question. Okay, so we have top handle. Exciting, riveting. Okay. Here we have side handle. Also riveting. It's, you know, feels just like the FX9. Yeah. This guy, and apparently this guy is the same viewfinder as the FX9. That's what I've been told. I don't know how accurate that is, but I do like this like articulating, like pivoting screen. This is really cool. That way you're able to, because I've seen people just mount it straight to the top of the body without even a top handle. So this is pretty cool. Just a little 1/4 inch right at the bottom. Yeah, this is neat. Okay, and then the moment we've all been waiting for, the body. Oh, look at that guy. It's so tiny. It's so small. Here's one of my batteries. Holy moly. This thing is really tiny. This is a Core BPU battery. This thing is so tiny and light. Like, this feels like, you know how wooden camera sometimes has like their wooden, literally wooden cameras? That feels like it's just a, it's so small. That's cool. All right. So yeah, I don't really plan on rigging this out. Kind of similar to my A7Ss. One of them has a cage, but that's just so I have both options. But yeah, I basically just plan on leaving this built. And this is I can't get over how tiny this body is. You could easily fit multiple of these units in like a rolling case or like a backpack. So, I mean, to travel with, this is going to be so much easier. If I ever do have to travel with these cameras, this is going to be so much easier to throw in a backpack or anything as opposed to like an FX9. So yeah, let's see what we got. Port cover up here. And actually, I'm going to plug this in just a second so you guys can experience this all with me at the same time. Anyone think there will be any third-party adapters for XLR without using the top handle? Yeah, that's what, like, that's like word on the street is. Like, a lot of people are, I mean, a lot of you know that, so here's the XLR ports. They're on the handle. So if you need to fly it on a gimbal or need to keep it light and you take off the handle, then you're kind of out of luck in terms of audio because there's no XLR ports on the body. But basically this handle communicates with this port right here. So the word on the street is that manufacturers, I don't know how proprietary like this communication is, so I don't know if that's like available for third parties to access, but that would be super cool if there's like a little thing you can add to the top of here. I would have liked to have seen like an 1/8 inch jack. There's a headphone jack right here, but it would be awesome. It would have been cool to at least have like an 1/8 inch to like plug in something. Like you can plug in like a G4 or like a Rode mic or, you know. There is a scratch mic. I don't know how great it is, but yeah, there's that. 6K or 70 A7S III. Why did you choose the Sony FX6? Well, I actually chose both. I have all three of them. I have both of those cameras, but I have not touched my 6Ks in a hot minute, which is why I gave one away. So I still have another one. I think it's a great camera, but for me, like the A7S is like the power available in that camera it's pretty unparalleled. Like you don't have to rig. I don't like the 6K. You need to rig it out for it to be really usable, and you don't really need to do that with the A7S. And it's got, you know, I don't need RAW. Like it has all the slow-mo, all the codecs, all the bit rates that I need, and autofocus. So I mean, it just depends. Like it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing, ultimately depends. Depends on what you want. Depends on what you need. So that's why I have so many cameras. Is that there's like a different tool for different jobs, and I'll get a little bit more into that as in terms of like who this camera is for, because it ultimately depends on what perspective you have. So we'll get a little bit more into that. Hey Robert, how would you compare the image quality of the FX6 to the Sony a7S III? From what I've seen online, this is purely speculation. It looks super identical to the A7S III. It basically looks like an A7S III packed into an FX body. Again, this is just from what I've seen online. Obviously, I have one, so I'll be able to test it. So the next few weeks, we'll just kind of be going through this camera. So, but from what I've seen, it looks nearly identical. There was a scratch mic. Yep, there was a scratch mic. It's this little, I believe it's this little hole right here. I don't know if you can see this. This little guy. So, yeah. I'll tell you what though, I do like this like slate gray, like with the newer Sony bodies. Like I really love this like gunmetal like gray. I think it looks really sleek. All right, so we got a side handle. I haven't used the FS5 all that much, so there you go. And this should, it's like a little bayonet. Boom. A little bit of play there. That's because it's a, I'm assuming because it's a bayonet style. All right, and then EVF, this isn't an EVF viewfinder. So something rather. Yeah, so I'm really excited in seeing how, if this caliber of camera will start to be implemented more, because like I've almost never seen FS5s on productions. If I do, they're usually you know, sort of like a crash cam, like a throwaway thing. But I think a lot of that is due to like there being no time code. So this camera has time code now. So I'm interested in seeing, and like the image quality and frame rates and all the specs available, like, you know, it's pretty much on par with the FX9. So I'm interested in seeing like it will productions and production companies start implementing this more in you know, real world use. I've seen like a ton of people use the FS5 like as an owner operator, like small production companies, but I've never really seen it on larger sets. So this goes in right here. Let's see. Dark Star, main difference I've noticed in color and image is skin tones and the severity of the green overtones before correction. Good to know, good to know. Yeah, so one thing that I've noticed in terms of like, at least from the FX9 and A7S is that the FX9 has like overall like an overall smoother radiation and like a smoother curve. The A7S feels a little bit more punchy, like it has a little bit of a sharper contrast. And if like, I feel like with the FX9 you can reach a little bit further into the shadows, like just it has like the smoother toe. So that's what I've noticed. But they do like the A7S and FX9, like the newer Sony cameras are like the first time that I'm really comfortable with like mix and matching cameras, because that's like one of my biggest pet peeves. I like never really like mixing cameras. But with like the newer Sony line, I feel a lot more comfortable doing that. Nothing more annoying than playing the handle. It's true. I mean, it's not terrible. Like if you're just operating, but I mean, you can hear that. There's a little bit there. FS5 grip had a lot of play, but it's straight up for quick rotation. Are there many reasons why someone would buy an FX9 anymore? Yeah, well, I have a list of reasons for each camera, actually, so we'll get into that a little bit. Recently sold my S1 and switched to the A7S III so far, feeling like the best engine ever made. Yeah, that's awesome. I know the S1H, like that was a pretty beastie of it. I've only held one. I've never actually used one, but like the feature set and like those Panasonics. And I don't know how much the S1 differs from the S1H, but yeah, these small mirrorless cameras are getting pretty wild. From what I've seen, FX6 and S3 should have the same sensor. Oddly enough, some videos say the FX6 has more latitude than S3. Yeah, definitely going to test latitude. I actually did a latitude test on the A7S when I first got it. I just haven't done it. I haven't done anything with it, but I want to redo it now that this camera's out and now that I have it in my hands, and so that way I can kind of do a little direct comparison there. Also, if anyone watching here hasn't seen Sony's latest trailer for the FX6 trade out, nice. I have not. I actually did that come out? When did that come out? I don't know if I've seen that. So is this being filmed on FX6? I don't know. You'll just have to wait. Does the FX6 have the same auto END as the FX9? Yeah, I believe it's the same internal variable ND, and that's also another huge reason why I got this camera. The FS5s, I mean, it was basically the same thing as the FS5, which was phenomenal, and that's always one thing I wanted when I had the FS7. And that's always, time and time again, I love the A7S III to death. But time and time again, I always am so annoyed on the fact that I have to like sling filters around. And I really, really, really don't like using variable NDs. I obviously will because I have to, but if I have the option not to, then I won't. So the fact that this camera has an internal variable ND, I love it. You gotta love it. You love to see it. Anywhere on availability? Waiting on a pre-order. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know what's going on with the like shipping delays, but I'm pretty sure that one of their factories had a fire. So that's why almost nobody in the U.S. has their FX6s yet, because there's just a huge, there's obviously a huge demand for it, but it's because that there's a fire. Locking mounts, locking FE on the FX9 versus normal FE mount on the. Yeah, that's also another thing. I think a lot of people sleep on that locking E mounts on the FX9. I personally love that mount. It's super solid. That's also another little thing in my list of benefits for each camera, and also we'll get into that. Before we do, I want to power this guy on. We pretty much have everything ready to go. One thing I've been curious on is I have a couple different batteries here. So I have a BPU 30. I'm excited to actually start using these again because I have a ton of these, because I obviously have a ton of cameras. These come with every Sony camera. So I have a ton of these laying around. I've never used them because they're tiny. They are 28 watt hours. I have a BPU 60, which is kind of your standard 57 watt hour battery, and then I have the Core, which is 98 watt hour. So I'm interested in seeing how these fit, because the battery port does look a little shallow. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's the same depth as the FX9, but so here's a 30. This obviously is flush. You got a little bit of space there. Here's a BPU 60. Okay, so that sticks out just, kind of as you normally expect as a FS7, and then 98. So this one sticks out a lot more. And these are the batteries I primarily use, mainly because I have a DTAP, but also, I mean, these are 98 watt hours. Yeah, these batteries have a ton of capacity. So yeah, there's that. So what I want to do now is I'm going to plug one of these guys. Actually, I want to plug this in. This is a full battery. I want to see how much runtime I can get off a 30. So what I'll do is I should be able to jack this guy in through its SDI. Also another thing I'm really excited about. SDI. And then power this guy on. So power. We're on. Okay. And I don't know if you have that feed up there. You might not. Mike, you got that feed or no? No, you don't. Well, hang on. Let me. Because I have a menu here. That's probably, maybe it's a clean output. All right. So let me just input my camera settings, date mode. Here. What's the date? 6, 7? Okay. 2021. Time. It is 10:24. Stand by. 10, 20. All right, so I have a couple lenses here. I got a 50 and a 24. Logan, which one should I throw on here?
Let's do
50. 50 it is. All right, an accessory that cannot be used on the, it's connected. Do you have that picture, Mike? Oh, there you go. Hey, look at the first image, first live images. What does, I'm getting this, an accessory that cannot be used on the grip terminal is connected. What the heck does that mean? Maybe it wasn't plugged in all the way. All right, let's see. This feels honestly a little loose. Maybe just tighten it right here. No. This mount honestly feels a little loosey-goosey. If you want to cut to this really quick. This guy right here. I don't know if there's a... yeah, look at, like... I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if you can tighten that, but like... I don't know. It just doesn't feel as... interesting. Okay. All right, let's dive into here. Let's see what we got. So if we cut back here, I'm going to turn on the menus. Navigate my way around here. How the heck? Okay, interesting. Got that. Let's go to monitoring. Put display, SDI. Boom. All right. So one thing I've noticed is that, so if you look at the side of the camera here, you have a menu button. There we go. We have a menu button right here, as you come to expect. But you push it, and then it goes into like the quick menu. You can't really, yeah, this quick menu that you, a status menu. That's what it is. On the FX9, this is normally the status menu, since there's no status menu. But if you hold, so if you get out of there, but then just hold it down, then it gets you into your traditional menu. So there's that. Let's see. If we could use only one lens for the FX6, which one would it be? That, you know, I don't know if I can answer that one for you. That depends. Let's see. Do you think the lack of touch tracking in IBIS is a reason to buy two A7S3s over the FX6? That's a very good question. IBIS is one of the huge things, like I kind of want to talk about it with this camera. So whenever I did use the FS5 and I was doing kind of like run and gun stuff, IBIS was huge, and like the FS5 never had IBIS, so like I would notice like whenever I would go past 50 millimeters, all the like micro jitter, like it would be really, really hard, even if I was on a monopod, because like if I was, well back then I was using EF lenses, so like you had to pull manually, but even just pulling off the barrel would just be like, you would see, it would look like Saving Private Ryan. So I think the fact that this doesn't have IBIS, I don't like I get why they didn't do it. They didn't do it because the variable NDs, which for me, I'd personally rather have the variable ND rather than IBIS. But then again, it also depends on what you're doing. This camera, it's still very light. Like with this handle and with the you know good side. This is a 50. With this, like it's a good amount of weight to where a lot of the like it'll be pretty steady. But like once you start going past maybe like 70 millimeters, it might get a little bit dicey unless the lens has OSS or any kind of image stabilization. So that'd be something to keep in mind. Is it possible to operate the FX6 without the LCD? Yeah, I'm sure you can. You just need to use your own external monitor. Small rig makes a good monitor mount for the FS5. Yeah, that's actually, thanks for, good looking out. I'll definitely check that one out. Cool, all right, so let's dig into this menu and get our settings right. Also, these buttons are like kind of punchy. I kind of like it. Whereas the FX9 buttons were a little bit more recessed. So if I change my white balance, let's go 56. Looks good. Let me change my shutter. And also one thing I'm also really excited about is that these menus are basically, from looking at it, they're basically the same as the FX9. And that, for me personally, I'm stoked about that. A lot of people are complaining that like they don't like the menus, but like I obviously use the FX9 a lot. ISO, shutter, angle. But for me, I am super used to this menu system. I think it's a lot better. It's not great, but it's a lot better than the FS7. So the fact that this basically mirrors the FX9 will make it a lot easier to pair as a B camera whenever using an FX9. So I'm stoked on that. All right, let's get out of here. 56, low bass. So this is Cinetone. Just turn on shockless gain. All right, so then I have control of iris. Let's see. Yeah, I got to dial in all my settings, but there's Logan. What's up, Logan? Oh yeah, so surprise, we're not using FX6s. These cameras are FX9s. Good old faithful. Let's see. I got myself an FS7 June last year. Bad decision because there's the FX6. I mean, it depends. Like, if productions are still asking for FS7s, like even the FX9 hasn't replaced the FS7s. So like if you're talking and speaking in terms of production, I don't think it was a bad decision. But if you're doing a lot of like owner operator, kind of like yourself as a production company, maybe. I think I actually got a second FS7 last year, so I'm kind of right there with you. But the FS7, you still get a phenomenal. You still pull phenomenal images out of that camera. So at this point, it's hard to get a bad picture out of a camera. What about the free Sony software that can retrieve stable image by analyzing image data? To be honest, I have never used like a lot of people love gassing up the Catalyst browse and the stabilization. And don't get me wrong, it's great, it's wonderful. I have never once used it. And I think that's mostly due to the fact that like you have to like basically transcode your footage again. And I'm not gonna do, like, I don't want to apply that to every clip. And I mean, maybe that's a good thing, but for me, like if what they really need to do is they need to share that code or share that software with NLEs, so that way it's integrated with other programs. Because I edit in Resolve, so there's that. Do I have the 20-135 Servo? Is a sharp lens and would appear nicely with the Sony FX6? It's a great question. We're actually going to see that in just a second. That's actually what these FX9s are on right now, the 20-135 Servos. I just picked one up a few weeks ago, and I really like it. I enjoy it. It's a great like ENG, like for quick. You get a nice big range. So actually, Logan, if you want to cut to Logan's camera, if you want to back out and just show me your wide. Boom, that's your wide, and then you can just punch all the way in. My only gripe with that camera is that it's still fly-by-wire. So any changes you make on the focal length barrel, so like Logan, what I want you to do is I want you to like whip crank it, so then you're just all the way, all the way one way. Again. So, and I'll kind of mirror you. So again. So even if you're cranking it, it's still like there's the speed is limited in terms of how fast the zoom. So you can't really do any like kind of crash zooms with it, which is a little unfortunate. But it is nice when you're using it with the Sony with an FX body, because that way, it's like if you turn on the power zoom, you can do kind of really smooth movements, and you can kind of dial that in too if that's what you're looking for. So. So there's that. So with this camera, let me know if there's anything specific you guys want to see out of this. Actually, let me change my frame rate. And then what we're going to do is we'll swap out the main camera, and then we can actually kind of compare it side to side. So SDR, custom mode. One thing I'm curious is I wonder if I can make an all file on my FX9, pop that in here, and then load that up. That would be super cool. Clip name format. Hey, look at that. Still sucks. Thanks, Sony. What was I gonna do? Oh, frame rate. Base setting. The way they set this up is kind of funky. Am I tripping? Project, there you go. Let's do, well, we're in 29.7. We're gonna lose that for a sec. All right. Can I record audio into the USB-C port? I don't think so. I doubt it. Is there a USB-C port? Remote. There is a USB-C port. That would be cool. I don't think you can though. Do I find business to get the camera or get the camera to get business? That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. I think at the end of the day, your body of work matters more. But it's hard to get. I mean, it's basically a teeter-totter. So it ultimately depends. And again, like I said before, productions have never really asked for FS5s, so that's why I'm really interested in seeing how this kind of starts showing up in real-world shoots. But if in terms of like direct-to-client production company stuff, this is perfect, and I think that one matters a lot less. That one camera doesn't matter so much when you're doing that kind of stuff. Someone's at the front door. Okay, so let's see. So another thing that I've noticed is that this camera does not have it does have a Super 35 mode, but I believe it is in 1080 only. So if I go here and back out, yeah, I'm locked to 1080. So that's another one of the kind of weird, I don't know if it's a quirk, but it would be it's a great selling point for the FX9. So actually, I can pop into here. So now I'm in UHD. The Rode NTG Go has USB-C recording to computers since there's no way of recording audio. That the top handle would be cool. That would be cool. I do agree. That's a firmware thing, so we all just need to maybe we just need to storm Sony's headquarters. What's my favorite snack for midnight editing sessions? That's a phenomenal question. I really like dark chocolate Kit Kats. I don't know if you guys ever tried dark chocolate Kit Kats. Choice right there. So can we see clear image zoom in 4K? Let me see if I can dig in here. So go into here. Does this have clear image zoom? Honestly, that's not really a feature I've used on the A7 bodies, but I'm not a. Am I mistaken in that this has a clear image zoom? Because normally that's the scan mode. Full frame, yeah. I mean, these are the only kind of scan modes I'm seeing. Yeah, yeah, I complain. I mean, yeah, you got it. Menu looks awful. Menu is basically the same as the FX9, so I enjoy it. I'll need to kind of reconfigure this user menu, but I mean, again, like since I'm so used to the FX9, like this is no problem at all for me. So there's that. I can't. There's no AF and DCI resolution. Let's check that out. Mike, can you mute that? So let's go to DCI. Yeah, I still have AF. So this is in 4096, 2160. I wonder if it's maybe, no, yeah, I still have autofocus, so. And again, I'm like, you can kind of, I can already kind of tell, like, just with how light this camera is, like moving, and this is a 50 millimeter, you can kind of see how aggressive it is with the handheld look. So something to keep in mind. Will I be shooting in Cine EI? For the most part, yes. For like live streams, basically, I'm planning on using this camera as a, you know, as I said, that my primary YouTube camera. So that includes, you know, all these streams. So for any live work, I'll use Cinetone in custom mode. But for any like, you know, actual job, 90% of the time I'm using Cine EI S-Log3. Coming from Canon menus, I don't know if I'd ever find anything in this menu. I mean, yeah, Canon menus are super nice, but you know, just different system. So, Catalyst Browse lets you export in its original color space at will, so you wouldn't have to transcode, but is an extra step. And yeah, that's really the extra step that I'm really not interested in. And like, I'm not really browsing I'm not browsing my footage in Catalyst Browse when I'm editing. So like maybe that would make sense, but for the most part, like I'll just throw everything into my bin on my NLE, and then like, if there's a specific clip I want to stabilize, then most of the time that's already in my timeline. So I'd have to like go back and figure, you know, replace that clip with a retranscoded one. So it's just like, I prefer not to do all that. Do I plan on using this as an A cam and your A7S III as a B cam on smaller productions? Yeah. I have, you know, these three different tiers of Sony cameras, and I plan on using them all. And again, like I said, like I always say, it depends on the job. So sometimes I'll choose my A7S, sometimes I'll choose this, sometimes I'll choose FX9s. And ultimately, like I think a lot of people forget that like there should be different tools for different jobs, and there's not one camera that like solves that like everything. Like you can get pretty close, but the camera you shoot on should be analyzed per job, in my opinion. The same menu appear when you use other monitors like Small HD. I'm going to say yes, because I mean right now the feed you're getting is through the SDI, so you're seeing the exact same thing I'm seeing on the viewfinder. Once you use a camera system long enough, you get used to it. Preach. Did I purchase any accessories? No, I didn't purchase anything. So I just got the body because I have a million different Sony cameras. So it's like I don't really need to purchase anything else. So one thing I want to get into is kind of like who this camera's for, and I kind of have some thoughts on, because a lot of people are like looking at this camera now, because like, and they're wondering where it fits, because like it has pretty much all the capabilities of an FX9 and half the price. And ultimately, I think it depends on what perspective you're coming from. So like, if you're looking at the A7S, if you're thinking to yourself like, why should I choose an A7S? For me, and I have like a list here. For me, it's a smaller form factor. It's tiny. Like you can literally, like I fit two entire packages in my roller case. So being able to show up somewhere with one tiny case is amazing. So it's easier to travel with. You can take stills if you need to. And then again, what we're talking about, IBIS. So it's like I did that cooking thing a few months ago, and that would have been, I think I probably would have struggled a lot with this camera because it didn't have IBIS, because everything was handheld. And there were a few moments where I did lean on the active steady shot. Because I mean, you're talking about 6 to 8 hours of holding a camera. Like it doesn't sound like a lot, but after 8 hours in this position, you know, like you're only human. So when you're looking at the FX6, like why would you choose the FX6? For me, it's the NDs, it's timecode, XLR, SDI, Cinetone BBU batteries. These are like super widely available. These last a ton. These last forever. And I'm looking at the meter right now, and I got 100 minutes on this BPU 30. So it's like over an hour and a half on a small, tiny BPU batteries. I can fit like 2 or 3 of these in the space that I can of a BPU 60. The ND, like again, I'll always defer to the NDs because that's my one gripe with the A7. Not that I expect that camera to have an internal ND, but that's always my number one annoyance whenever I am using that camera. And timecode. I have a dedicated timecode port now, which is amazing. It doesn't matter as much since, if you're using a Tentacle, you're just plugging that into the audio input anyway. But it's nice having it. It's just a lot cleaner when you have it integrated into the file metadata. And in terms of FX9, like why would you choose an FX9? It's a really good question. It's a lot harder now that this camera's out in the wild. Sorry, I mixed that up. So why would you choose the FX6 over the FX9? So I would choose this over the FX9. Obviously, much lighter form factor. It's basically cut in half, super light. You have expanded frame rates, so you have the obviously 120 S&Q. So same thing that the A7S does, and that stuff is super nice to have. I've never had anything above 60, so being able to shoot in 120, I mean, it's not for everything. It does look great, but I think slow-mo, it's been overused since the dawn of time. I mean, if you look at any cinematic B-roll on YouTube, I mean, that's what you'll find. But it is nice having the option. But also, I think on the A7S, having 120 with IBIS, I have used that handheld a few times, and it's incredible the results you can get. And I would choose this over an FX9 because you still have autofocus in S&Q. So you still have autofocus in slow motion, which is really cool. And from what I'm aware of, it's you'll maintain autofocus so long as you're shooting in a frame rate that's derivative of your project time base. So if you're in 24, you'll be able to use 120 S&Q with autofocus. That's pretty wild. I mean, enough said. You can get RAW out without the extension back. I don't know how many of you guys use RAW, but I don't. But it's there if you need it. And it's got about half the power draw. The FX9 is really, really power hungry. Sucks up a ton of juice. And a lot of times when I'm using these batteries, the core batteries, the estimated runtime on the camera display is never really accurate just because the power draw, I think the FX9 power draw is like 35 watts, and I think the FX6 is around like 18. So it's greatly reduced power draw, so you can get a lot more bang for your buck out of your batteries. And then moving on, why I would choose the FX9. So it's basically everything I mentioned before from the A7S perspective. And also, again, production usually asks for FS7 or similar. So it's like usually that specific caliber is requested. So there's that. I mean, again, the FS7, one of the most popular production cameras in the world. When they want to bring out an FS7, I mean, they know that basically the FS7 and FX9, I mean, those are basically pretty much the same tier of cameras, so it's much more easier to bring out on productions. But from an FX6 perspective, I think there's something to be said about color reproduction. I think once you get into the finer details of the sensor and how it reproduces color, I still think the FX9 comes out on top. Whether or not you'll be able to notice these differences, I mean, that remains to be seen. Probably not if you're just looking at it on your phone screen or whatever. But with the FX9, you're getting a true 4K debayer since your acquisition is from a 6K downsample. So the image will be inherently a little bit more sharp, but because the sensor is set 6K, you're getting a true 4K debayer. And you'll have a Super 35 mode in 4K. I still use Super 35 mode a lot. So that gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of what your lensing options. Since a lot of lenses are still, I mean, Super 35, people love to hate on Super 35, but Super 35, I mean, it's been the gold standard for forever, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I mean, Arri's next sensor is going to be Super 35, so it's like people love to whine and moan that, you know, I want full frame, I love the full frame look, but it's like Super 35 still has a great image. So that's just my opinion. I shoot with Super 35 all the time. Whether you do or not, I mean, that's up to you. But the FX9, it's nice that you have that option to shoot in Super 35 while shooting in UHD or 4K. You have XLR ports on the body with the FX9. There's that. And again, like I was saying earlier about the overall image compared to the A7S, it has an overall smoother curve. And when I look at the two images side by side in post, it has an overall smoother gradation. So, and again, going back to the color reproduction, like I think once you get into the finer details and nitty gritty, I think obviously the FX9 image is better. And again, whether it's noticeable or not, I don't know. And the final thing that I have to say, looking at the FX9, is the locking E mount. I really like that mount. It does make lens swaps a little bit more tricky when you're by yourself, because you have to basically always have two hands when you're swapping the lens with the locking E mount. But it's super solid. It's essentially like a PL mount, and I like it. All right, let's, I just missed a ton of comments. Let's see, not sure if you answer this. How do I feel about the FX9 needing the extension unit for RAW, whereas the FX6? The extension unit was, I don't know. I never use RAW, so I can't really speak to that. I have no real interest in using RAW, because for the most part, you're kind of locked into ProRes RAW, which I edit in Resolve, so I don't think that's ever going to happen. So it's cool that you can get it out of the smaller FX6, but again, I don't plan on using it. How do I plan on getting stable footage? I have an FX9 and thinking of getting a glide cam, but not sure that's the best option. For the FX9, I probably would not do a glide cam. For the FX9, you're probably looking at like a Movi Pro or one of the bigger Ronin, like a Ronin 2. Because I have flown the FX9 and like that's basic. Like once you enter that kind of caliber of camera, like that's basically what you're looking at. I have, when I first got my FS7, I've tried it on my glide cam. I've done a job or two with a glide cam. It's not it. I wouldn't even touch. The post on the glide cam is so thin that any movement you do will just transfer into the post, and it's not a fun time. Using a camera filming is not a challenge, but getting the business still is. Yeah, I agree. And in this industry, it's a lot of it is who you know, and that's just the reality of it. Can I recommend a good and affordable video tripod for FX6? Not sure if my weak silks will still take it. Also, I'm looking to buy a main light. Any suggestions are appreciated. Well, Aperture's coming out with that new 200D, which looks really cool. That'd be a great starter light. It's like $300. I ordered 3 of them. And it's brighter than a 300D Mark II, which is apparently, so that's wild. In terms of tripod, I would look into the Sockler Ace series. I know they have like an XL, but they have different types of heads, but I would look into the Ace series. Skip Manfrotto, always skip Manfrotto. Benro, they actually make pretty decent tripods, so you can get a pretty robust tripod and head from Benro. But for me, I would also look into the Sockler Ace series. Let's see. Miguel, love the channel. Learned a ton. Cheers from Spain. Hey, thanks, Miguel. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. I returned the S3 for the FX6 because of internal and DSAI time code and slightly nicer colors in S-Log 3. So Cinetone. There you go. Cinetone is wonderful. I love Cinetone. A good amount of jobs, especially corporate jobs, because Vegas is when things were normal, it was like a corporate market. So a lot of those jobs required baked in color. So Cinetone is incredible. I know you can tweak the picture profiles in the A7S to get basically Cinetone. I think Extra Shot has a great video on how to do that. I haven't done it myself, but I would check that out. If you have an A7S III, go to Extra Shot's YouTube channel, and they should have a video on how to get Cinetone on your A7S. Can you have simultaneous HDMI and SCI out? Let's see. I think you can. When I was looking in the menus, it looked like that was the case. So if I go to monitoring, and if you want to go ahead and switch to this, Mike. Output on off. Yeah, so it looks like you have dual output. I think that if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was not the case in the FS5. I just used one a few weeks ago. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was one or the other. But it looks like this one's like the, actually if I go to output format, yeah, there you go. So it looks like HDMI will be 1080i, or you can do 1080p. So that's interesting. So I wonder if, because that was always the super annoying thing about these cameras, that they would always output PSF signals. But now, if this is actually 1080p progressive, that's super cool. So that's good to know, especially when you're doing live stuff. Let's see here. Fan from India, appreciate it. Can I explain why when I film in Cinetone you lose 2 stops of dynamic range? Yeah, so basically, hey, what's up, Aladdin? Basically, when you're filming an S-Log3, basically it's compressing all that information as much as possible, so that way you're able to extract it. When you film in Cinetone, you're basically changing the curve, and you're basically extrapolating that information in camera. And different picture, that's basically what a picture profile is. The different picture profiles have apply different curves, so that's why different picture profiles have different highlight roll-offs, and similar with shadows. But it's essentially because you're applying that look in camera. Image out of the FX9 is more detailed and the colors are closest to a Venice look available. Yep, there's that. Going back to color reproduction. Wish you could stick around. No worries, catch that replay. And thanks for coming by. I feel like once the Sony releases an 8K full frame center block, they would have the 6K record mode for the FX9 through firmware. So do you think that would be something where you like send your camera in? You know, I don't know how I really feel about 8K. You know, that's why, you know, there's no real need for it, in my opinion. Like, I've never had any use case ever for 8K. I know you can crop in, do all that business, but again, I'm an in-camera kind of guy. So if I'm gonna make a decision on framing, I'm gonna consciously make that decision on set. Central block for the Venice, got it. That'd be really interesting. I always keep telling all my friends that, so with all the YouTube monetization, I've never actually cashed out. I've never inputted my information. So all that AdSense revenue has just been sitting in YouTube. And I always joke around and say that, like, once I have enough money there, then I'll cash it out, and then I'll buy something silly like a Venice. And then I can make a video, and then I can make a YouTube video titled, I bought a Venice with YouTube money, for that clickbait. Audio peaking, is my audio peaking? Let me know. I pre-ordered my FX6 from Anorama 4 minutes after it was available. Anorama can't tell me when it's going to arrive, which I also placed an order at B&H. Yeah, I'm really glad I switched. Now it's probably just a luck thing there. Yeah, that's what I did. If the FX6 came out before the FX9, would you still purchase the FX9? Probably. Only because I know how successful the FS7s were. And my FX9s have been working like dogs. They've been working like champs. My first one paid itself back in less than a year, so that's why I got the second one. Second one is like halfway, 2/3 there, so it's like actually, I got my first FX9 like literally 1 year ago. We were doing a stream 1 year ago, so in that amount of time, I've made a considerable amount of rentals just off these cameras. If I wanted to use a larger external monitor, would I still need to keep the Sony LCD? I don't think so. You can take this off. You can unplug this. We can test that right now. So if I unplug the LCD, Mike should be still able to switch to the camera. And there you go. So there you can see all the menus. And then if you want to switch back to me, I don't have an LCD. So there you go. Can I use the user rig Minimax with the weight of the FX9? Minimax, I'm not sure on the payload capacity on the Minimax. You probably could. If you're not rocking a lot of accessories, I think you probably would be able to. FX6 for sure. You can remove the sensor box on Venice. Yep. So that would be super cool. Matthew, hey Rob, thanks for your content. Iona FS5 Mark II in Atos. Nice. Iona, and just bought the FX6. Should I sell the FS5 or do you think I can match them? I think matching them might be a little bit difficult. I have never liked the FS5 color. To me, that camera is like super magenta. And a lot of these newer Sony cameras lean super green. So you probably could if you really wanted them to. But for me, I love doing all that stuff as close as I can in camera. If it were me, I might let go of the FS5. But again, I'm not sure how many times you're needing 2 cameras. Amazon's saying February, so maybe that would be similar to when. Yeah. So basically, I'm basically lucky in that I got this camera because I'm guessing that a very, very small batch from B&H went out. But I think universally, I was only expecting to get this camera in February because that's when they're expected to receive. I don't know if it's a bunch of batches or what, but I do think they're like kind of trickling in. So I just got lucky. But again, I was not expecting this camera until mid-February. On the FS5, you have to decide whether you want HDMI or SDI. Also lose your external output while recording. Yeah, that's a bummer. We were using the FS5 a few weeks ago, or last week for New Year's, and we were running into issues with that. Anytimes I've needed to use an FS5, I feel like I was struggling during the color correcting phase. Yeah, I feel the same sentiment there. I was never a huge fan of the FS5 color, so a lot of these newer Sony cameras I really like the color. They definitely skew a little bit more on the greener side. And to that point, like a lot of people, like I know Gerald Undone, he loves, you guys know Gerald Undone. He was criticizing the camera. I forget which camera it was, but he was criticizing one of Sony's newer cameras on that it doesn't really put out an accurate image. And to that point, I don't think that's what Sony was going for. With a lot of their newer cameras, I think they're more so going for a pleasing look as opposed to an accurate image. And again, like these cameras that you're seeing right now, this is Cinetone FX9. It's a really pleasing image. If I threw a color chart up there, I don't know where the vector scope and the color patches would lie. But straight out of camera, it's a pretty pleasing image. Can I do a review on the 503 and 703? Can't find reviews on them anywhere. Yeah, I've had those monitors for a few years. And actually, I do have some thoughts on them. I've never really put them out, but that's good to know. Leave a comment on this video so I don't forget. I'll add that to my list. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about is like the red Komodo, because like it's the same price as red Komodo. To me, red is like, they're like the hype beast in the camera industry. They're like, they make great products, but they're just such an overhyped brand, and like people fantasize more about the thought of owning a red than actually doing quality work, in my opinion. Like when you see red, you're like, wow, But it's like, I mean, ultimately, if I took a red Komodo and this camera and put them side by side, you might, if you knew what you were looking for, you would probably be able to tell. But for 99% of people, you probably wouldn't. That would actually be a really great YouTube video. So I'll maybe just put that one in my pocket. I know Potato Jet does that a lot with phones and stuff like that. But yeah. I think Joe was saying the colors were slightly skewed in log modes, but I don't think it's such a big deal. I found that adding a touch of magenta. Yeah, and usually that's what I'll do. A lot of times I'll just, you'll take your color wheels and then you'll just push them slightly green. Or honestly, for me, a lot of times I don't even touch the color wheels. It's the temperature tint. So then I'll just skew the tints over to magenta and then, just check the waveforms and parades, and then you got a wonderful looking image. So, yeah, again, I plan on using this camera for a lot of my YouTube stuff and my one-off jobs where this is all I need. Some of the times I'm asked to bring a gimbal, doing the whole gimbal dance, and for times where I need a internal variant D or time code, this is what I'm planning on bringing. So what I want to do now is I'm going to reset for a quick second. I'm going to throw Logan up in here, and I'm going to replace this angle with this camera. I'm going to put the 28-135 on this camera, and then we can switch back and forth between the two cameras, and we'll just see how they look in Cinetone. So actually, before I do that, let me preset some of these settings. So Logan, if you can read me off some of those settings, just so I'm making sure I'm picking the right stuff here. So are you at 5,500 Kelvin? 56. So 56, you're in Cinetone. Let me go to projects. 16 by 9. And you're at low base ISO? Yep. 320? 320. Actually, really quick, I want to test this ND. So if I turn on the ND, go to variable, and go into my ISO. I really wish, if you want to cut to this other camera, on the FX9, you had the directional buttons that I really miss. So yeah, cut to, yep. On the FX9, you had the directional buttons here. I kind of really wish that. You do have the little joystick like here, but I don't know, just something I'm not used to yet. All right, so, all right. ISO, where's that? There you go. So I'm going to jack this up. So this is 20,000 ISO. Sick. Dial this in. Is it going? Oh, it is going. There you go. 8 stops. How does that? So this is 20,000 ISO. That's pretty wild. That looks pretty good to me. You see a little bit of dancing here, right? But I mean, more than usable. Let's maybe even go a little bit higher. 25.6. 51.2. I mean, there's definitely noise, but it doesn't look terribly video-y. I mean, what do you guys think? 64,000? Like for me on the FX9, I really only top out at 12,800 before I start getting a little uncomfortable. But 32 on the FX6 looks pretty dang good. Huh. All right. Well, there you go. Here's your quick little ISO test. All right. I need to reset this. That menu thing is really throwing me off. Let's go to low base. 320. All right. So if you want to stay on this camera, Mike. Yeah. And then I'm going to unjack here. Logan, let's throw you in. get to some of those comments in a sec. Oh, actually, you know what I need to do? I need to throw a plate on here. Actually, Logan, you throw it on. So you gotta do this.
I think so.
So here's your top. Take this out. Let's put it on the bottom. And I will get to some of these comments. All right. Deciding between use FS7 and a new FX6. I'd go FX6. Yeah, FX6. Do I use V-Lock on my FX9 or proprietary batteries? It depends on the job. If I'm in more of a production environment, I'll use gold mounts. I hate V-mounts. I'll use gold mounts. But if I'm just rocking the camera body, I'll just use these guys. If I'm trying to stay light and traveling. FX6 is light years ahead of FS7. Yep, I agree. Super 355 and lenses is the real answer. It all depends. Not sure if I've commented on it, but do I think there's more image depth or richness in the 12-bit B-RAW than 10-bit S-Log3? That's a good question. I don't know if there's more richness. I would say it's different for sure. I think it's probably easier to push and pull and kind of qualify specific colors and grade specific tonal values. I really, really like B-RAW. So I think it's definitely more sharp. But again, different color sciences. So I really like what Blackmagic is doing. Well, what kind of plate is that? This is a wooden camera. This is the kind of universal dovetail. What's that?
Just the tightening on the. I just slid it back on.
Oh yeah, just all loose.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're different.
There we go. Cool.
Yeah, it's a wooden camera, universal base plate. So it accepts dovetails. So I've been using dovetails a lot more. So yeah, that's that. Am I checking out the Komodo anytime soon? That's Komodo versus FX6. I kind of came up with an idea a little earlier on a side-by-side. But for me, Red is like one of the most overhyped brands in the world. So not for me. They make great products. I just think the brand, again, not for me. If it's for you, great. Like no shame in that. But for me, the FX6 is a much more practical camera, and I'm all about functionality. So, okay, so we're going to swap this out. I am going to come over here, put this on the ground, and I'm gonna.
I like it back here.
Yeah, it's nice, right? Yeah, are you all friend? Yeah, let me. Time to start your own YouTube channel. There you go. All right, give the viewers what they want. A little comedy channel. All right, FX6. Going on. Boom. All right, and I got to do a lens swap. So you know what? I'll probably show you what I'm doing. Servo. Boom, look at that. All right. Actually, help me swap lenses. So if you want to get the FX6, just take that lens off.
Got it.
All right, look at that chunky boy. Eat dick. All right, well, it looks like exposures. Oh man, I really don't like this loosey-goosey thing. I need to reevaluate. So at first impression, it looks like there's a little bit of exposure difference. Let me plug this guy in. Getting that. So there's the FX6.
Oh, we're gonna give us Steadicam lessons.
Yeah, there you go. FX9. All right. So here's a, here, I'll just bump in so you know this. So what do you guys think? I believe we're matched. Let me turn off this display. Actually, let me go to something like that. What do you guys think? What do I think? Hey, that looks pretty dang good. Holy moly. So the tight camera is the FX9. This is the FX6. That's pretty good. Actually, yeah, hit me with a couple more of those cuts.
FX9 looks a little bit more green.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of a magenta. And that's kind of what I've noticed with the A7S as well. There's a slight push to a magenta. And then also, again, like what I was saying, so if you look at Logan's black shirt, on the right side, on the FX6, which is pretty similar to the A7S, like it looks like the shadows just kind of, they have really sharp kind of shadow fall off, and it's really crunched, and it has a lot of contrast, which is nice. But if you switch back to the FX9, you know, I feel like it's a little bit of a smoother pull, especially like if you look at the neckline. So go to the FX. Yeah, just go back and forth a few times. Yeah, it just kind of has like a overall smoother tonality. What are people saying? I'll jump in.
Lack of locking E-mount will be an issue for larger cine lenses.
Lack of a locking E-mount for larger cine lenses. Well, there aren't really any E-mount cine lenses right now, to my knowledge. There's that 16 to 35. I don't think so. Yeah, that's a tough question. For larger lenses, for sure, but to my knowledge, there aren't really E-mount cine glass. Canceled FX6, purchased a Tyco, and started being a psych. It just took too long. I'll wait about Jen. There you go. There's an option too. Are they both sets? Yep, both are set to Cinetone. Definitely seeing the magenta and green difference. Yep. What are recommendations for V-mount battery plates for Sony cameras? FS5, FS7. I like wooden camera stuff. Obviously, and I think they do have a good amount of, but also small rig. Everyone's using small rig lately, so. But not for power, but for power, I would look at a wooden camera. I wonder if custom white balance would change the. Yeah, that would actually. I think I have a color checker here. Let me see if I can find one. Yep. So let's see what this does. So if I go into A, let's balance. It's kind of far. My balance set. So there's that. And then I'll go into preset A. This one. How's that look? Logan, go ahead and stand up for me. Okay. I think it's closer, right? It definitely feels closer. Like this, like now, like I would be much more comfortable with intercutting these two straight out of camera. What do you guys think? And also, I'm looking at these monitors and the viewfinders in the back. That's also one thing I really dislike about the FX9 viewfinder is that there's like it's like 300 or 400 degrees Kelvin off, and it always throws me off whenever I'm setting white balance. But the FX6 viewfinder is way warmer than the FX9. Just looking at it at the back of the camera. So I wonder if it almost looks like I honestly really can't tell. It almost looks like the FX6 viewfinder is a little bit more accurate in terms of color as opposed to the FX9, because the FX9, looking at the image on the FX9's viewfinder, it looks straight up like 500 degrees cooler. So yeah, it's interesting. We don't have, we can't do a split one right now. I don't have the decimator handy. So I can't do that right now, but I will plan on doing a YouTube video, so get subscribed. But yeah. So yeah, that was a good call on the custom white balance. So I would probably, actually if you want to tilt down this guy too. Definitely closer, yeah. That new Tokini 65, yeah, I still really need to add that and the 40 to my can. How can we record 16-bit RAW in the Sony A7S III? From what I've heard, Atomos Neon are capable. That's a good question. Again, I don't have a lot of information on that just because I'm not really in the RAW space. Wasn't the Shogun 7 or Ninja 5? Didn't they make that compatible with RAW out? Can I look at both shots? Yeah, don't have the decimator out right now. Still a slight difference, but much closer. Highlights seem different. Yep, I think the FX6 A7S has, again, a sharper curve, sharper contrast. Warmer in one, cooler in the other. FX9 is softer and better roll-off. Aloha from Norway. Is there any color shift when using variable ND and a Pola filter? That's a good question. I don't think there shouldn't be because it's all basically electronic. That would actually be an interesting thing. So actually, let me go in here. Logan, if you want to step in really quick. Let me go ahead and jack these two guys up. So let me go ahead and just kick it into high gear. And I'll just max. Maybe I won't max it out. So let's go to maybe 12.8. Over 32. Dive into here. All right. So how does color look now? So now we have a little bit of internal variable ND. Does it look pretty much? Yeah, it looks like it really hasn't changed much. Maybe a little bit of exposure difference on the main camera, but yeah, that's about it. Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. TNR, as some would say. TNR. Maybe black seem less crushed on FX6 because of better low light. I think the opposite. I feel like they're more crushed. But again, that's just haven't really tested that, but if it's similar to the A7S, then I would guess that they'd be a little bit more crushed. Do I shoot in S-Log 3 or Cinetone? Depends on the job. Most of the time, if I have the choice, I'll be in S-Log 3. But there are certain jobs, mainly corporate stuff, that require baked-in looks or Cinetone. From my understanding, the A7S III pushes raw signal over HDMI to the Atomos Ninja 5. Yeah, that's what I was under the impression as well. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. I'm super excited about this camera. And actually, Logan, if you want to go to the FX6, push that display button. If you see it, get that clean feed. You see that eye autofocus putting in work? That's cool. You'll have to see it. It's a small button. It just says display. Somewhere on the side. There you go. Parfait. So yeah, I'm really excited about this camera. I'll obviously be pumping out a bunch of content over the next few weeks. And I think next week we'll be doing next week we'll be doing our latitude test and some more side by side. So if there's anything specific you would like to see out of this camera, let me know. But other than that, thanks for stopping by. We're glad to have you. If you appreciate my efforts here, I just recently started Patreon, if that's what floats your boat. If it's not, then hey, float on away. It's all good in the hood. But again, thank you for everyone for coming and stopping by. I had a lot of fun. Really interesting to see like how this camera will kind of rile things up in terms of Sony's lineup and what it'll do for owner-operators and other videographers, cinematographers that are looking to pull the trigger. So I'm personally interested in seeing how this will affect the world of production. So yeah, totally okay as a big cam combo. So thanks again, everyone, for coming by, and we'll see you in the next one.